I'm Robert LeBoyer, Senior Biotechnology Analyst here at Noble Capital. Our next presenting company today is Theravance Biopharma, a company developing medicines for respiratory conditions and the central nervous system. The presentation will be given by Rick Winningham, the company's chairman and CEO. Mr. Winningham, please proceed.
Thank you very much, Robert, and thanks to Noble Capital Markets for inviting us here to present today. If I could go to the next slide. I'll be making a standard safe harbor statement here. I'll be making some forward-looking statements as I go through the presentation, and you can refer to our online documents filed with the SEC and 10Qs and 10Ks. Next slide, please. Okay, stepping back, sources of value for Theravance. What are they? They really come in really three different sets. One of them, YUPELRI. YUPELRI is a drug that we market today in the United States with a partner, Viatris, to treat chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or COPD. YUPELRI was discovered and developed by Theravance, and today, in 23, we grew about 9% to $221 million in annual sales in the United States. I'll talk more about YUPELRI in the presentation. The second pillar of value really is Ampreloxetine. This is a drug in phase 3 development for a very serious neurological condition in MSA patients, or multiple systems atrophy patients, called NOH, or neurogenic orthostatic hypotension. This is a debilitating, terrible condition. I'll give some reference points, just how bad it is in the presentation. But we look to make a difference in treating these patients. We got top-line data anticipated in 2025 from our phase 3 program. And last year, we were granted orphan drug designation by the FDA, which carries with it some benefits. Now, the third column, really of value, comes from how we've structured the company. We've got $102 million of cash. We have no debt. The cash that we're going to use this year is going to be minimal because of really the cash flow generated by YUPELRI, and relatively minimal spending on anything other than YUPELRI and Ampreloxetine. Beyond that, we've got milestones coming in from a historical product that we worked on called Trelegy, and we have $150 million in milestones that we can earn on YUPELRI that are separate and distinct from the profit share agreement in the United States. Then additional milestones that we can earn from Viatris's success in marketing YUPELRI in China, and that product will be filed in China at mid-year this year, and we look forward to that. So corporately, Theravance, no debt, $100 million over $100 million in cash, minimal cash use expected this year as we progress Ampreloxetine into phase 3 and we continue to sell YUPELRI. Next slide, please. So YUPELRI, let's go to the next slide, and I'll get a little bit deeper into what YUPELRI is. It's a once-daily nebulized long-acting muscarinic antagonist, or LAMA, one of the really core classes of medicines that are used to enable patients really with COPD to breathe better. The difference with YUPELRI is our drug is delivered via a nebulizer, or soft mist inhaler, and it's only given once a day. So the patient takes it in the morning, and then it can enable better breathing for 24 hours until the next daily dose. This is a differentiated product. There are no other products like this currently in the market. We see a significant commercial opportunity going forward, 9% growth last year, really just beginning to tap into the opportunity. The brand is profitable to us on a brand basis, and we have expanding profit margins simply because we're becoming more and more effective in investing in growth for each dollar of sales that's returned. Significant milestones and royalties. U.S. monotherapy, we can earn up to $150 million in milestones, separate and distinct from the profit share. And the first milestone is one for $25 million for the achievement of $250 million in net sales in any calendar year. China, In the monotherapy, I spoke to this a minute ago. We have successful phase 3 data in China, and this drug will be filed mid-year. It's $45 million in milestone, but very attractive 14 to 20% tiered royalties. And then YUPELRI is registered outside the United States and a number of small countries where Viatris operates. And we earn low double-digit to mid-teen royalties in those countries. IP protection last patent is out to 2039. So next slide, please. Just briefly, YUPELRI, a nebulized product, 30 doses in this box that you see. Each dose is contained within a plastic nebule. The patient pulls out the nebule, little plastic tube, and opens it up, puts it in their nebulizer, administers it for 5 to 8 minutes, and they can breathe better for an entire 24 hours. This product is also combined with other classes of drugs and was done so in the phase 3 program that in fact supported its approval. But we focus just on a marketing basis. We really focus on patients who use nebulizers. About 1 in 10 patients use nebulizers, and YUPELRI is the only drug in this class that can be delivered through a nebulizer. So very exciting for us, and the key collaboration here is with Viatris, in which we co-promote in the United States. Next slide, please. So this is the progression of sales. I'm not going to spend any time on this particular slide other than showing you a visual that is moving sales up and to the right. Obviously, in the middle of the pandemic, it was challenging to launch a new respiratory product, but since we've come out of the pandemic, we see nice growth overall in the market. And that growth is driven significantly by our efforts in the hospital. Theravance has a hospital sales force. We sell into the hospital. Next slide, please. And the key is to get patients on YUPELRI when they're in the hospital and have them follow when they leave the hospital, have them leave with a prescription of YUPELRI that they can get filled in the community. And you see here a really nice growth in volume over the last few years of YUPELRI since its launch. We increased volume 37% year over year, relatively stable pricing. And again, about 80% of these patients who receive YUPELRI in the hospital leave with a YUPELRI prescription. So it's key to driving brand growth overall. Next slide, please. Just very quickly, this slide, we've got a lot of opportunity for growth in YUPELRI, both within the current long-acting nebulized market, as well as many patients who currently use short-acting therapy inappropriately to control their COPD over time. Really, those patients, they should be using YUPELRI, potentially plus another medicine. And so near term, the opportunity for us is to continue to erode into about 400,000 patients, which is a multiple of the current number of patients on YUPELRI. Next slide, please. Ampreloxetine, rare neurological product in phase 3, a once-daily medicine that is a norepinephrine reuptake inhibitor to treat symptomatic neurogenic orthostatic hypotension in MSA patients. Next slide. It is a rare disease, but about 40,000 MSA patients with symptomatic NOH in the United States. This is unfortunately not limited to the United States, but about multiple size of the US market if you look across Europe, China, and Japan. We own this product completely with the potential to partner outside the United States. And we've got IP protection out to 2037 in the US. We've received orphan drug designation. With what we've been able to show thus far, and assuming that our phase 3 program confirms that, is ampreloxetine is a product with highly differentiated efficacy and safety, and importantly addresses a need that's unmet completely in the market today. Given the work that we've done historically on ampreloxetine, we see the phase 3 program in terms of the context of a central nervous system drug having a high probability of success. clinically, and then a high probability of success because of the alignment that we have with the FDA. Next slide. MSA, terrible, incurable condition. It has an impact on life that's greater than Huntington's disease, greater than traumatic brain injury, and NOH is the debilitating condition of MSA. And in fact, as the slide says, 87% of patients report a reduced ability to perform any activities, and almost half of them claim that NOH has robbed them of their independence. And this is absolutely true. These patients are confined to a wheelchair or a lazy boy or potentially the couch. So being able to treat their NOH really can provide them a significant level of the ability, quite honestly, to live their life. Next slide, please. So what does ampreloxetine do? Ampreloxetine, when it's given once a day in a pill form, blocks really the breakdown of norepinephrine in the system, and it allows the norepinephrine to exist longer in the body. And that norepinephrine, it increases the blood pressure of patients when they go from a sitting position to a standing position or a laying down position to a sitting position. Not hypertension, but maintains their blood pressure at normal levels, which in fact can improve symptoms like dizziness, vision, blurred vision, coat hanger pain in the shoulders, weakness, etc. Next slide, please. This is from an earlier study that we did in patients with MSA. We know that ampreloxetine, in fact, enables norepinephrine to exist longer in the bloodstream and slows its breakdown. That's really what the left panel is about. That increased level of ampreloxetine results in an increase in standing blood pressure of about 18 millimeters of mercury versus placebo. That difference in blood pressure drives the blood, or it increases perfusion in the tissues. And that increased blood in the tissues is what leads to an improvement of overall symptoms that is clinically significant. About a 1-point change in this OHSA composite index is clinically significant to patients. And in this study, we reached about a 1.6 point change that was nominally statistically significant in MSA patients. Next slide. This previous work led us to the design of this Cypress study, the phase 3 program that's ongoing. MSA patients with NOH enter the study. They're put on drug for 12 weeks, ampreloxetine for 12 weeks, and then they're randomized over an 8-week period, either to placebo or ampreloxetine. In the previous study, we saw patients on placebo sort of go back to where they were before drug, and the benefit of ampreloxetine continues. So after this 8-week therapy, 8 weeks of therapy, we measure the results, and that measurement at the end of the 8-week double-blind randomized withdrawal study is what, in fact, calculates our primary endpoint, which is beyond dizziness. It's really an overall well-being of the patient. The patient feels better, can exist within their environment in a much better way. And so we're very excited here to be able to deliver this data next year in 2025. Next slide, please. So focused on value creation coming from YUPELRI, the respiratory drug treating COPD with significant opportunity for future growth. Product ampreloxetine targeting a rare neurological condition, MSA, a product that we wholly own. We're in the middle of phase 3 with an orphan drug designation, top line data next year, burning minimal cash, $102 million in cash, no debt. And in addition to the value created by YUPELRI on an operating basis, as well as ampreloxetine, we have access to significant milestones and royalties, both from Trelegy as well as YUPELRI in the future. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Robert, and thank you for your attention.
Well, thank you, Rick. That was a very interesting presentation. And a couple of questions that come to mind. And one of the things that you mentioned was that you're calling on doctors in hospitals so that the patients leave the hospital with a prescription. And then afterwards, when they're outpatients, they'll be refilling and becoming patients who are on the drug on a regular basis. Could you just go over how you divide the market between Theravance and your partner, and then how and the things that will drive growth for YUPELRI going forward?
Sure, a great question. So the hospital sales directly into the hospital, which is what Theravance is responsible for, make up a little bit less than 10% of the overall sales in the market. The community sales, or prescriptions that are written by the pulmonologist in the community or the primary care physician in the community, makes up about 90% of the overall sales. But what's important about the hospital is that there is both a direct sale for YUPELRI in the hospital, and then an indirect influence on demand when the patient leaves the hospital with a prescription to be filled in the community pharmacy by the patient, and then continued on therapy by the outpatient in the outpatient market. And when that patient is cared for by either a primary care physician or a pulmonologist. So what we hope to achieve in the hospital is to transition the patient to YUPELRI, to get the patient discharged discharge from the hospital on YUPELRI, and then transition that patient out to the community, where Viatris, in fact, after the first prescription, is really responsible for continuing those prescriptions by calling on the primary care physician or the pulmonologist of that patient. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
What you're describing is your sales force making the calls to get the patients on the drug to a concentrated market of doctors and hospitals. And then once they leave the hospital as an outpatient, Viatris carries out more of the general calls, keeping them on the drug, and the type of sales call that requires a larger continuous calling sales force.
Exactly. And for us, in the hospital, we call on the pulmonologist, we call on pharmacy, we call on respiratory therapists in the hospital, because, many times YUPELRI in the hospital is replacing a medicine that might be used between 4 and 6 times a day. Well, you can imagine with respiratory therapy, if those respiratory therapists are in short supply, which they are, the ability to transition from a medicine that they need to help administer 4 to 6 times a day to a drug that they only have to administer once a day is very valuable. The other aspect is that if the patient handheld therapies in the hospital, a typical inhaler, well, those have many more doses that are necessary for a hospitalized patient who generally stays in the hospital about 3.5 days. Well, the hospital might have to buy a 7 to 30 day amount of a handheld therapy, whereas they just have to buy a daily dose of YUPELRI. So if they are in for 3.5 days, they really only have to buy 3 doses of YUPELRI, which is also an economic benefit to the hospital.
Yeah, that's that was a subtle point, but makes a lot of economic sense for the hospitals, the patients, and the doctors.
And yes, and then the most importantly, if we can help those patients with YUPELRI during a time in which they're not well, they're in the hospital, and we give them YUPELRI and they can breathe better, and they know that they're only taking this medicine once a day. Well, that's the most important thing that we can do, because they're in a fragile condition, but yet YUPELRI has helped them feel better and breathe better, and it's part of getting them out of the hospital and back to their homes.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's just an improvement in care, and just works in everyone's favor to get them out. And then once they're out, Viatris maintains them on the drug
Yes,
and would address the practices that are a little bit more general and just require more sales force, more salespeople, whereas you're more focused.
exactly.
Okay, great. And in terms of ampreloxetine, what's the unmet need now, and how does the drug address that?
Yeah, so today there is not a medicine that works to treat patients with MSA and NOH. There was a drug that was approved about 10 years ago called droxidopa. It was approved under an accelerated mechanism, so with a small amount of data, and then the drug was approved and the company had to run a confirmatory study. This drug primarily worked in Parkinson's disease patients. It didn't work. They didn't think it worked in MSA patients. And turns out, based on this second study that was run, it doesn't work in MSA patients and it doesn't work in Parkinson's patients even. So really, ampreloxetine is a product that is going into the market really doesn't have competition for treating these patients on a longer term basis. And that's what's so exciting, is that you've got a medicine to treat a rare condition where there is nothing that's helping these patients right now. And so to be able to move the OHSA composite score, which is this collection of, does the patient feel less dizzy? Is their vision better? Do they have less pain, etc.? These measures, and thank you, Katie, for pulling this up, less fatigue, can they concentrate better? These scores here that are in the far left column entitled OHSA, these scores are totaled up for an overall symptom composite score, and these are the scores of our last study in MSA patients, where you see we did improve all of these conditions and to improve the overall composite score. So really what we're trying to do is improve the overall quality of life of these MSA patients. We also help their ability to stand for a short time or stand for a long period of time. And we're very, very, I very excited because nothing else works here, Robert. I mean,
Yeah.
to be able to help these patients, just be a terrific thing to do.
Okay, and on that note, could you just remind us of the status of clinical development and the milestones going forward for the product?
Sure. So the big milestone, and Katie, if we can go to a Cypress clinical slide that might be helpful for the audience to see. We'll finish our phase 3 study, Cypress, in terms of enrolling the last patient in at the end of this year. Those patients will then go through 20 weeks of therapy, 12 weeks in an open label portion, 8 weeks on a randomized withdrawal where they either go on placebo or they go on ampreloxetine, and then we measure our primary endpoint. So with all that, we expect data in 2025 from Cypress. This is the schematic diagram of the study. Again, 12 weeks on medicine. Everybody that comes in, all patients receive ampreloxetine for 12 weeks. They're then randomized 1-to-1 to placebo or ampreloxetine. And then we measure the difference here. And what happened in the earlier study was those patients on placebo, they began to worsen and worsened over an 8-week period of time. And those patients on ampreloxetine sustained the benefit that they saw in the earlier open label portion. So, I think and then we already are working on the NDA. We've got all the data that we need to, in fact, do the sections of the NDA that are not the Cypress study. So we'll complete most of that NDA by this year. And then by the time we get to the Cypress data next year, all we will need to do is to plug in the Cypress clinical results into the NDA, assuming it's positive. and then file for approval with the FDA. And this is a full approval. This isn't an accelerated approval. It's a full approval, and that'd be great. And then if success there with the FDA, then we'll have a rare neurological drug treating a rare condition that's an orphan, and that provides something that no other medicine can provide.
Yeah, all great attributes to a product.
Yeah, I think we're very successful. Obviously, we worked for a long time on this particular medicine. This was a drug that was discovered at Theravance. It was developed at Theravance. We did the work to really define it as a good norepinephrine reuptake inhibitor. It doesn't hit other cause an increase in other neurotransmitters that might be problematic. So, and we will have, by the way, we'll have an investor day on Ampreloxetine on May 23rd, where we'll have some outside key medical experts talk about not only the disease of NOH, but also the condition that Ampreloxetine treats, and the potential that Ampreloxetine holds for these patients.
Great. Okay. And one final question. Could you just remind us of your cash on hand and expectations for how long that's going to last, and what the anticipated burn rates are going to be?
Yeah, it's really a credit to our team. We have finished the year with 102 million in cash. We expect very limited cash burn this year as we finish majority of the Ampreloxetine study. We effectively, again, at fourth quarter of last year, we're effectively cash neutral. We would expect, as I said, minimal cash burn this year. We were able to take money that we had on the balance sheet, about $325 million, and we repurchased and reduced the shares outstanding over the last couple of years by nearly 40%. So we only have about 48 million shares outstanding now. We're not in a need for cash. We don't need to finance to reach our objectives because YUPELRI is profitable for us and is throwing off cash and is funding effectively the Ampreloxetine phase 3 program. And with that and the cash balance that we have, we should be able to launch the product. So we're in a very great financial position, I think.
Yeah, it's rare to see a company that can fund their R&D entirely or almost entirely from operations and sales. So that's great, unusual too. Terrific. Okay. Well, thank you very much. This has been a very interesting presentation. I will be marking my calendar for that R&D day in May, and look forward to hearing about these milestones going forward.
Thank you, Robert. Very exciting time for Theravance, and again, thank you for allowing us to present.
Okay, well, thank you again for presenting, and thanks everyone who attended. Have a great day.